For this one, we're going to step aside from the app we're building and we're going to check out what props and state are. I created a couple of components here and I'm going to show you some examples. But firstly, what is props and what is state? Well, props are very much like the HTML elements attributes. So, for example, if we have an image tag, image, and we also have a source that we're feeding the image tag with, so it should know where to get the image. This is an attribute, and as you will see later on, the props are very much like this. So with props you can transport data down to other components. You can transport data down, you can't transport data up to another component. So you use props to get data to another component down in the component tree. And what is state then? State is where the data lives in the component. And we're going to start to look at the state. And I got some few examples here where we can see how the state works in a component. So I made this component called props and state. This is just rendering out the alpha component. And the alpha component is a stateful class component. So we have state in alpha. So if we look at state here, state is just like a regular object, but the difference is when state is updated, React always re-render the component. And that is very handy for us when we want to do stuff. And note that it's only re-rendering the component, not the whole page. So it's just updating the things that have changed since the last render. As you can see here, we're just writing state as a regular object and we have different properties inside the object. So you may also see something like this in other code. You have a constructor and we call super props and then we set the state. And we'll just use the property alpha value here also. Like this. Well, you can call it the old way of doing it. We had to do all this before, but we don't have to do that anymore. This is just the same as writing this. So I prefer to have this shorter code when I code in React. So I'll use this syntax instead. So, but just so you know, you may come across code like this, and this is also completely fine and okay. And so now we know how to create the state object and how we can assign it with initial values. But how do we update the state if we want to do it in our code? Well, there's one thing you should know about the state, that is, it should always be treated as an immutable object. And with an immutable object, you shouldn't change it directly. For example, this state counter equals this state counter plus 1. This is wrong. You shouldn't do like this because you're altering the state directly and you shouldn't do it. Instead, I made this click function here that's assigned to a button. So if we check here, I have a button and you click it and you see I console log out when we click it. So if we go back to our code and look at this button code, well, the first thing we have to do is to take a copy of the state where we want to update the state. So we take a copy of this state counter and put it in the copy counter variable. And then we add 1 to the copy counter. So this is a copy of the state and we're not modifying the state directly. And how do we set the state then? Well, I can delete this and we'll write it again. We have a function in React that's called setState that we always use when we set the state in our component. So we use this setState. We have a parenthesis and then curly braces to update our object inside the function. And we want to update the counter with the copy counter value. So if we do it like this, we're not modifying the state directly. We're using the setState function and we're using a copy when we're adding the number to the old number. So if we look here, we have the counter and it's adding a number on each click. This is the state we're showing here. So it's the state who updates, and the component also re-renders. But we can't see it now because we aren't changing anything in the component now. So this is how state works and how you update the state when you want to do it in your component. What about props then? Well, if we go back to our alpha component, let's say we want to render another component named beta. And as usual, we render out our component in the return statement. So we write beta, and then we want to send a prop down to beta. You can have any name you want on the prop as long as it's following the naming convention of JavaScript. So we can call it from alpha, and then we want to send down let's say we want to send down the state alpha value. We do it in curly braces because now we're in JavaScript, and when we're using JavaScript in JSX code, we always have to do curly braces before and after the code statement. We're getting this state alpha value, and we self-close it. So now we're sending down the alpha value from alpha state, that is a string. The beta will receive this prop, and we have to use it somehow, and we have to put it somewhere maybe if we want to do that. So you can put it in the state of beta like this. You just write this props from alpha because we named the prop from alpha. And in this case, it's fine to set the value directly in the state, but you can only do it when you initialize the component. So this is fine for now. You don't have to use set state when you do the initializing of the state. So the alpha value will have the prop value we sent down from alpha. And if we want to show this value in our component somehow, we just write, as usual, curly braces when we're into JavaScript, and we grab the value from props, these props from alpha, like this. And if you want to show a value from the state in a component, you do it like this. We're just changing to state, and we want to show the beta value like this. If we go back into Chrome, we can test what we'll be doing here. This is still working, the button, and yes, this is beta showing a prop sent down from alpha. That is, oh yeah, data from alpha. Fine, this is the data we sent down from alpha. And this is beta showing data from state, that is, this is data from beta. So this is from the beta state we're showing here. We can also check our props and state if we go into our React developer tool. So we click down to the components. If we look at alpha first, we have no props there, but we have the state. The state is alpha value with a string, and the counter is 21. If we go further down, we go down to the beta component, we have the props, that's from alpha that we sent down as a string, and we also have the state. You can now see that the state is set to the prop we sent down from alpha, and we have the beta value as well in state. So if we go back to alpha and we click the button, you can see that the counter is changing. It's increasing in the state, so the state is updating as we click the button. So this is how props and state work in short. We're going to do much more of props and state when we continue coding our app. So see you in the next video.